So now we're going to have a look at inserting a trim or attaching a trim, depending on how you want to call it. So you'll need a piece of calico with a straight edge, and you'll need a trim cut the same length as that piece of calico. Now this trim, once it's finished and attached, will look like that. So you'll just see the edge of the trim. So this is good for anyone who has a pom-pom trim and you just want to see the row of pom-poms. This is the technique you'll use. Other people may have a trim and they want to see all of the trim. If that's the case, you would do your narrow hem finish first, and then your trim would be put in place and top stitch. So you'd have a row of stitching, maybe 2 rows depending on the width of the trim, on top to hold it in place. But for us, we're going to insert our trim so we just see the edge. So to begin with, you're going to find the edge of the trim, so the edge that you don't want to be visible once you've finished. So this edge we want visible, and you're going to line that up with the edge of your calico, like that. Holding it in place, line it up with your one line, because we are using 1 centimetre seam allowance just like we have before, and start sewing. So reverse and continue. Now you'll have to stop and readjust so your edges are lined up, and then pinch together with your right hand and sew, keeping an eye on that 1 centimetre line so your stitch line is nice and even. Again, readjust your trim so the edges line up and continue stitching. When you get to the end, make sure you reverse. Take up lever up, press the foot up and cut your threads. Once we have stitched our trim in place, we need to overlock that edge. So overlock it just like before, lining up with that line, the first guideline. Go all the way through, leaving a long tail. So you'll notice I overlocked it with the trim facing upwards because this is going to get folded over. And we want the right side of our overlocking stitch to be visible once it is completed. Once you have overlocked your edge, you need to iron it so it is folded over like that. So make sure your iron is on the right setting, which is cotton, and fold it over so it's nice and flat. So when you fold it, you need to make sure it is nice and flat and open like that. You don't want it to fold over like that and have a little kind of flap. It needs to be nice and flat. Iron that so you've got a nice crisp finish ready for the final step, which is top stitching. Okay, so having a look at that, it's nice and flat and open. Now that we've ironed our trim, we need to top stitch the trim down. So top stitch is just a stitch on top, so this doesn't flap around. So for us, we're going to use a foot's width. And what that means is we use the presser foot as a guide. So we use the edge of the foot and we line it up with the fold or the join where the trim meets the calico, and we use that as a guideline, and that's called a foot's width. So reverse as usual and then sew, making sure the edge of your foot is lined up with the join of the calico and the trim. Reverse at the end, take up lever up, trim your threads. So that is your finished trim. So that is what the hem of your shorts is going to look like. But you've also got a curve to go around. So we're going to have a quick look at doing your trim on a curve. So just like before, this is our curve. You line up the edge of the trim you don't want visible with the edge of your calico. Line it up with the one guide. Do your reverse stitch and continue sewing down. When your fabric starts to curve, you need to stop and adjust so that edge is in line with your curve. So I'm going to stop and adjust. And I use my fingertips to hold that in place and to twist and pivot my material as it goes around. So you will have to take it quite slow when you do this part to get a nice accurate finish. And again, always reverse. Take up lever up, cut your threads. Now just like before, I've overlocked this and then I've ironed it so it's nice and open and flat, and I'm ready to top stitch. So just like before, we're going to do a foot's width and take it nice and slow as we go around that corner, lining up the edge of our foot where the join is between the calico and the trim. Use your forefinger on your left hand and make sure it's nice and flat, the fabric, as you go around. So that is our finished inserted trim around a curve. And the foot's width is a perfect width to just catch that edge, the hem allowance.